Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. My name's Nick Park, and I'm taking us through a series of messages on the great prayers of the Old Testament. And you can actually read that two ways: prayers, as in prayers that you pray, or the great prayers, people who pray. Great prayers or great prayers, whatever way you like to look at it. And as we go through and see how God increased the power and the practice of prayer among his people down through the 39 books of the Old Testament, we can see a progress at work. And my prayer is that this will be like a prayer school for us, and we will be on a prayer journey, and God, through showing us these lessons, God will deepen our prayer lives as well. And today we've reached 2 Kings chapter 6. And it's the prophet Elisha. And he, of course, was a great prophet. And the king of Aram was sending raiding parties against Israel. But God was revealing to Elisha where the attacks would be. So the Israelites were always ready. And the king king of Aram, that's the king of Syria, was getting really head up about this. And he said, we must have a spy in the camp. And then somebody said, you know what, there's this prophet. And he knows, he can hear what you say, even in your bedchamber. And so the king sent a whole army of soldiers out to capture Elisha, because he was raving mad about this. And Elisha was at Dothan with his servant whenever the army turned up. And the young man looked out of the window in the morning after breakfast, and all he sees is all these Syrian, everywhere he looks, there's Syrian horsemen and chariots and everything else. And that's where we're going to start reading in verse 15 of 2 Kings chapter 6. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. "Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?" the servant asked. "Don't be afraid," the prophet answered. "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." And then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Now, of course, in a natural sense, the servant's eyes were already open. The servant he wasn't physically blind, he could see. But he was looking at it from a human perspective. He couldn't see what God could see. And so Elisha prayed for God to open this young man's spiritual eyes. And when God opened his spiritual eyes, he could see that there was a heavenly army surrounding them as well, and that heavenly army was far greater than the army of the king of Syria. Now, there's times when we need to pray that prayer. You see, so often when we find ourselves in a bit of a mess or a bit of a muddle, we pray for the circumstances to be changed. Elisha did not pray for the circumstances to be changed. He didn't start praying that there wouldn't be as many soldiers surrounding them. Rather than praying that the circumstances should be changed, he prayed for his servant to be able to see the circumstances as God sees them, not as man sees them. And very often we need to pray for that. Our natural reaction is, "Lord, I don't like these circumstances, please change them." But what if instead we were to pray, "Lord, help me to look at these circumstances and see them from your divine perspective rather than my very limited human perspective"? Because when we look at the same thing through God's eyes, then suddenly we realize the circumstances that we thought were dreadful, with the odds stacked against us, in reality, their circumstances are very much in our favor. Why? Because God is in control, and when he's in control, everything changes. I pray that today, there might even be a situation in your life where you've been praying for God to change your circumstances. Why don't you just try today praying and saying, "Lord, would you change the way I look at these circumstances so I can really see how you are at work right now?" And I believe if we can learn to do that, we would see much more of the miraculous power of God working in our daily lives. May God help us to do that. God bless you, and I invite you to join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.